The last time this happened, families in Central Europe boiled leather belts to make soup, not because they were poor, because everything they owned, their savings, their jobs, their supply chains, disappeared within the same 6 months. War took the infrastructure, disease took the people, and the combination took everything else. That was 1918. And the people who came out of it with anything shared 5 specific things in common. This video is about those 5 things, not investment advice. A pattern, a blueprint that has repeated itself across every major combined crisis in recorded history. Here's what nobody explains clearly enough. Either crisis alone is devastating. Both together are something categorically different. War creates demand for labor, logistics, manufacturing. Wartime economies can even grow short-term. Here's the part people miss. A pandemic hits the workforce simultaneously. The factories exist, the orders exist. The workers don't show up. The wartime economy isn't stimulated, it's paralyzed. During WWI and the Spanish flu, which overlapped for over a year, American life insurance companies nearly collapsed. Banks in parts of Europe froze withdrawals without warning. Agricultural output in France fell by more than 40%. Before global supply chains existed, before one disrupted port could empty shelves on another continent within weeks. Today, 80% of global pharmaceuticals travel through supply chains crossing geopolitically unstable regions. A single closed shipping lane ripples into grocery stores across the planet within a month. The question, what did the people who survived it financially actually hold? The first answer is so old that most people dismiss it immediately. That's exactly why it keeps working. When the German mark lost 99% of its value inside 12 months, layered on top of post-war devastation and disease, people who held physical gold could still buy food, cross borders, and start over. People who held only paper watched their entire financial lives dissolve. Gold doesn't thrive in normal times. But in a combined crisis, where governments print money to fund military operations while their tax base collapses, it does something nothing else does. It works without a banking system, without internet, without a government's continued existence. For thousands of years, across dozens of collapsed civilizations, gold has remained the one asset that requires no institution to validate it. Physical gold, not ETFs, not futures, not certificates. In a severe disruption, a paper claim on gold is only as strong as the institution behind it, and institutions are exactly what combined crises destroy first. Silver belongs here for a separate reason. It carries industrial demand, medical equipment, electronics, infrastructure, categories that accelerate during crises, not slow down. Very few assets ever occupy that position, but metals alone won't carry you through. Because the moment a crisis becomes acute, the most urgent need isn't wealth preservation, it's food. During the Russian Civil War, concurrent with one of the worst typhus epidemics in European history, something remarkable happened. Urban professionals with bank accounts, securities, property deeds, farmers with modest, productive land. Within 2 years, when the farmers were economically central, everyone else was negotiating with them. When formal systems ceased to function, the people with land that generated food became the backbone of every exchange network, every barter system, every informal economy that emerged. The lawyer's credentials meant nothing. The farmer's harvest meant everything. Countries that maintained agricultural self-sufficiency during World War II experienced disruption. Countries that lost agricultural access experienced something qualitatively different. Famine layered onto occupation, layered onto disease. Most people watching this won't buy farmland. That's not the point. The principle is exposure to food production, community agricultural shares, farming cooperatives, container gardening, rural land of any scale. Every one of those represents a different position on the same spectrum, being closer to where food comes from than the average person is. The average person during a supply chain fracture is entirely dependent on systems they don't control and cannot see. There's a category that appears on no conventional asset allocation chart, and in the most severe crisis scenarios, it has consistently outperformed every financial instrument that exists. During the Black Death, which eliminated between 30 and 60% of Europe's population, one group commanded extraordinary compensation regardless of what was collapsing around them. People with medical knowledge, even medieval physicians, working with almost no accurate understanding of disease, could reliably exchange their services for food, shelter, and protection. Because in a disease crisis, the person who shows up becomes irreplaceable. In peacetime, the highest valued skills are white collar, financial modeling, digital strategy, legal analysis. In a combined crisis, that hierarchy inverts without warning. Mechanical skills, repairing generators, water systems, electrical infrastructure, become critical when replacement parts stop arriving. Medical knowledge at even a basic level becomes scarce in ways that reshape entire community economies. Food preservation, water filtration, construction. These determine not just survival, but economic position within surviving communities. History shows the same figure emerging in nearly every major disruption. The person with critical practical skills who becomes economically central, compensated in goods, protection, future claims, building real wealth as formal systems deteriorate around them. The question isn't whether these skills matter. The question is whether you've built any of them before they become the most valuable thing you own. Post-WWI Germany, Yugoslavia in the 1990s, Zimbabwe, Argentina. The pattern repeats consistently enough that economists have a name for it. When governments face simultaneous stress from military spending and economic disruption, pressure flows directly into currency. Debasement is the tool governments reach for when no good options remain. Military operations require money that doesn't yet exist. Disease simultaneously destroys the tax base. The populations who suffer most are the ones with no exposure to anything outside that government's currency. The people who held Swiss francs in Weimar Germany maintained economic agency. Those who held only marks did not. A currency is a government's promise. When governments face maximum stress, promises are the first thing that changes. This means diversification across currencies from politically stable regions combined with hard assets that carry intrinsic value independent of any government promise. Cryptocurrencies belong here, carefully. During COVID-19, Bitcoin showed sharp initial decline, then significant appreciation as monetary expansion accelerated, but also severe volatility during genuine geopolitical uncertainty. The honest position, established digital assets may offer some hedge against currency debasement as a supporting element, not a foundation. Now the one that no financial advisor will ever put in a portfolio. During the Dutch famine of 1944 and 1945, under military occupation while disease spread through malnourished populations, researchers found something that contradicted the obvious assumption. Pre-crisis wealth was not the primary predictor of who came through. Access to informal networks was. Families with genuine connections to farmers, community leaders, and neighbors who coordinated with them had dramatically better outcomes than wealthier, isolated individuals, regardless of what those individuals had owned before the crisis. The economic logic is precise. When supply chains, governance, and healthcare fracture simultaneously, information becomes the scarcest resource, and information moves through trust. Which pharmacy has medication? Who has surplus food? Which road is passable? Every one of these life-altering questions gets answered first through people who actually know you. Social capital isn't built during a crisis. It's spent during one. It's built years before, through showing up when inconvenient, contributing before any return is obvious, building relationships across different skills and economic positions. And this is what makes it the fifth asset rather than the first. It is the multiplier on everything else. Gold held within a trusted community is safer than gold held alone. Land worked collectively is more productive. Skills inside a network create more value than skills held by someone no one knows. A person with strong community relationships and modest physical assets may be more resilient than a person with significant assets and no community at all. Pull back and look at all five together. None require a functioning banking system. None depend on digital infrastructure. All derive value from real human need, not market sentiment. All are buildable gradually, without extraordinary wealth before they're needed. Combined crises don't distribute damage evenly. They redistribute it away from assets built on the assumption that existing systems keep functioning toward assets built on what human beings need regardless of what's operating around them. The people who came through the worst historical periods weren't the ones who predicted the crisis earliest. They were the ones already positioned before positioning became impossible. The last time both crises hit simultaneously, families were searching fields for individual grains of wheat, not because they hadn't worked, not because they hadn't saved, because everything they had depended on systems the crisis destroyed. 5 assets, none glamorous, none complicated, all buildable starting today. Physical precious metals, productive land or access to it, essential practical skills, diversified hard currency, and the community relationships that make every other asset more powerful. The window to build them is always now, and it is always smaller than it appears. Hit the bell, subscribe. See you there.